Everybody, big round of applause for John Papa. He's back with a vengeance.
Thank you for having me again. Hope you had a great morning. Welcome to the afternoon here. This talk is all about a tool that I love called Visual Studio Code. VS Code can do that. So all of us live every day, no matter what technology we use, in some kind of an editor, whether you do Java or C# or JavaScript or Go. Whatever you write your code in, you're using an editor to do that. And what I find is that the tool that we live in is the thing that we tend to enjoy using. We pick a tool like VS Code or IntelliJ or Eclipse because we enjoy being there. So I want to show you some tips and reasons why I like using VS Code and how it can help you out. First, I'd like to start off with showing some resources. Everything you see inside this presentation you can get from these links up here. So it'll be in the video. You could also take a picture of it if you'd like to. I'll also share the presentation afterwards. The first thing I'd like to talk about with VS Code, which is really important to me, and I don't think a lot of people know about this, is that Visual Studio Code actually has two versions. There's a stable version and an insider's version. The stable version comes out once a month and it's very well tested. The insider's version is a nightly build. It comes out every day and it has new features in it. Often you get to see those features a month or so, sometimes 2 or 3 months before it hits stable. And what's cool about that is that the insider's version is very stable. I only use the insider's version. I've been using it ever since VS Code came out, which means that every time a new feature is out, I get to use it right away. I've never had to go back to the stable version. So I use the insiders, and I think it's a great idea for everybody to try it out. VS Code also works for Mac, Linux, or Windows. So the first thing I like to talk about is your setup. When you use VS Code, you can use different themes. There's about 1,000 themes you can choose from once you get inside the marketplace, and they're all free. I happen to like my own theme. I wrote one called Winter is Coming. There's a dark version of it, there's a white version of it, and I wrote a blue version of it. So depending upon what your contrast ratio is, you can choose one. Using different icons, there's an icon theme I like called Material Icons, which gives you icons in the Explorer bar. And the cool thing here is you can customize it and make it look any way you like. A lot of different people like to use a lot of different looks and themes, and you can choose the way you want. All you have to do, if you look in the upper right, to get to your themes and try them out, is to get to the extensions by hitting Shift-Command-X. All the keys I'll show you here today are for a Mac. If you need them for Windows, there's a link at the front of the slides where you can go find the Windows keys. Whenever new features come out for VS Code, some of the most popular ones end up in this page that's built into VS Code called Interactive Playground. The Interactive Playground is where you can try out these new features. For example, here's a multi-cursor. You can actually create multiple cursors inside your editor to update, delete, or add new lines of code. So you can try them out here. All you have to do is go to the Interactive Playground through the menus to try it out. So you might say, how would I find all this stuff in VS Code? If you remember anything today, when you use VS Code, hit Command-Shift-P. Command-Shift-P is the only thing you really need to remember, because that opens up the command palette, and from there you can type in any command you're looking for and it will find it. So Command-Shift-P will help you find things like the Interactive Playground. Emmet is a great tool that's built into VS Code. It allows you to do rapid creation of HTML. So you can do things like this, where I'm creating a nav bar that has a class with a nav bar brand, and then I create a div with 3 anchors. It'll automatically generate the HTML for you and show you previews of the HTML as you generate it. And that's just baked right in to VS Code. Prettier. If you were in the keynote this morning, we talked about formatting code. There's an extension for Prettier that you can install. After you install it, all you have to do is set up Prettier to on save. You can do format, or on typing, or on pasting, whatever your preference is. And all your code will automatically format itself when you press save. If you forget the keystroke, which is in the upper right, you can just hit Command-Shift-P and type in format, and it'll format the code for you. One of my favorite features is using terminal with VS Code. So I've long time been a user of the external terminal that you get with Mac, or you can use iTerm or whatever your favorite is. On Windows, the command. you can open up external terminals right from VS Code and point it at whatever folder that you're at, just by doing Shift-Command-C. But recently, they also added a feature where you can have terminal inside of VS Code. So now you can create a terminal at the bottom and run the same commands by hitting the control and then the backtick. That'll open up a terminal instance, use the same bash profile or Zush that you might be using, and you can type in your commands here. You can even add multiple editors. So we can go into VS Code right here and make it a little bit bigger. Let's close a few windows. And one of the things you'll notice is I can open windows and close them very quickly using keyboard shortcuts. Command B opens the sidebar, and then Command J opens up the bottom terminal. But let's say I wanted to open a terminal. I hit Command and then the backtick, and then I can type things in here like C matrix, and you can see the matrix right there. We can drag it down. And maybe you want a second terminal. Sometimes you're running a process and you want to keep it running, but you want to open a second terminal inside of here. Once you're in that terminal, you can come over here and hit the split plane right there. And if you hover over that, it should show you what you get. You can split the pane. We get this other one over here. So now if I click on that, you'll see I have two terminals. And I can say cowsay VS Code. So you can run your favorite MEM packages on one side, put it on the other. If you want to get super crazy, you can actually come in here and hit Command/. It'll open up multiple terminals. You can just keep going, and if you can read that, more power to you. You get the trash can to delete them, and just end back up with the one that you want. So you get that with stacking your terminals in VS Code. Probably the best feature of VS Code is the debugging. You can debug ASP.NET Core. You can also debug JavaScript and Node. Node debugging just works out of the box. For basic Node applications that start with an npm start command, you can just press your F5 key, and it will automatically start the debugger. And you can set breakpoints. You can set column breakpoints or inline breakpoints, and you can inspect and change values. So if we take a look at this one, inside of our application, I've got this Node app right here called Debugging Node. It's a very simple Node app just to see how it's running right here. And you set up, what you can do is set up different debugging profiles. So I'm going to show you what those debugging profiles look like. This one right here just says point to this folder. Point to that folder to find my Node program. And if I run that one, it's called Simple Debugging. I can hit the run arrow. Now I have a debugger attached to my Node process. So if I come back into my code, which is right here, and I set a breakpoint on that, and I run against localhost 9000, which we can do up here, localhost 9000, we hit our breakpoint. And then you can step through, you can run it, you can inspect values right over here, and you can look at your request object, you can change values, pretty cool stuff. And then when you're done, you can just hit the stop button. If you only have one Node project, I have multiple in this one. If you have one Node project, it'll actually run them all in there. Another thing with the debugging, we'll set up a different profile, because I have a different project in here. This one's running in a different folder. We'll run this one, and we'll go back over to look at it. Let's say that I wanted to set a breakpoint whenever I get my heroes. I've got this Mongo API inside of Node. It's going to go hit a database and get a bunch of heroes. This is pretty cool because you can go into a program like Postman, and you can hit the API. We'll zoom in a little bit. I'm going to run and send this. And when I hit send, it's jumping into the code. But let's say I wanted to inspect the heroes over here. I can't normally do this because it's in a callback. Well, while I'm debugging, I right-click over there. I can set this command, add an inline breakpoint, zoom back out. Notice there's a red dot over here now. I can hit continue to run. I can hover over it, and voila. There's my model with my data and the names, and you can modify them and change them. When you let it run through, you go back to Postman, you can see the data right down here. So it's really simple to set up debugging, and it's a heck of a lot better than doing console log every time you need to recompile and rebuild your code. Another thing I like is JavaScript type checking. So if you're using JavaScript, you can actually add this tscheck command at the top of your window, and it will automatically run the TypeScript compiler against your JavaScript. This is powerful because you don't have to stop using JavaScript at all, but if you add this flag at the top of your file, it's going to point out all the places in your code you made some mistakes by taking advantage of TypeScript. And that's just built in. You get JSON Intellisense. If you're in your NPM packages here and you want to figure out what versions are available, which ones are outdated, which ones are not installed, it'll actually give you IntelliSense and give you information about those out of the box. The best extension that everybody should install is if you have more than one computer, you have work and home or a family computer, and you want to share your settings. Once you get VS Code up and running the way you want it, there's an extension called Settings Sync. What you do is you install this extension, and it saves all your settings to a public gist, or a private one if you prefer, and then you can give that gist to anybody you want to get the same settings you have. That'll include your theme, all your keyboard shortcuts, all the extensions that you happen to choose, everything you love about your editor, and then you can share it. This is great if you've got a team at the office as well. One of my favorites is the multiple cursors. So I can go inside of a file like this here, and I can actually edit out everything that has a certain pattern. So I want to get rid of the versions. I do that first. Then I get rid of the quotes. Then I go down a line, and I put them all on one line, enter a space. I go to the front of the line, enter npm install. A very, very quick way to do multiple line editing very, very fast. Use this every day. It's got a lot of different uses for it. It's got progressive selection. Just hit Command D. You can also build Docker apps using VS Code. There's a Docker extension that makes it easy. You just choose the language you want, the port that you have, and it'll generate your Docker files for you. After it generates the Docker files, you can run them, and it can build your Docker images, inspect them, show the logs, or even push them up to Docker Hub or the Azure Container Registry, wherever you're storing your Docker images. And it's all built into this Docker extension in VS Code. I like to write a lot of snippets. I've written snippets for Angular. There's some for Vue. There's some for React that my team's created. If you go up in the marketplace, there's great snippets that you can use where you type a couple of letters and it automatically creates Angular components or to create a Vue single file component. Definitely very cool to use. The editor will give you quick fix ideas. If you ever see a light bulb inside the editor, it'll give you hints on things that you can do. If you forgot to import something, it'll say you need to go import that. It'll automatically refactor code for you. All you have to do is hit the light bulb or hit the command and the dot, and it'll automatically do those fixes. A lot of refactoring features, finding references, renaming symbols, peeking into code. I use this all the time when I'm renaming code inside the editor. And if there's something that you didn't see that you would like to see that's up there, there's actually over 5,000 extensions in the marketplace already. You can go check it out and go search for it. Some of them are quite popular. Some of the best ones are not as well known, but you can try these out very simply, and if you don't like them, you can uninstall them, or you could create your own. Great tools make you a better developer. It makes you enjoy what you do more, and if you needed those resources again, here's the links to everything I showed today, including the keyboard shortcuts and the extensions that you can get your hands on. I want to thank you all for coming, and I hope you take a closer look at using a tool that make you happy, VS Code. Thanks.
Thank you, John. John Papa, everyone. Alrighty, do you want to take one or two questions? Anybody? Anybody want to give a quick? Do I see any hands? I do. In the back over there. Do we have a microphone in the back or not? No?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi.
Something that I wish that I have been shown, and I don't know if this exists, so I'm using IntelliJ, and I want to try Visual Studio, but I have one thing that I don't know how easy it is to implement it with a plugin or something. So I'm using very, very often, like I have an object in JavaScript, and I just want to click and dive into this file straight away. So let's say I have my component, and I'm just pressing Command click, and I'm getting into this component. Does Visual Studio has something like that? Visual Code has something like that?
Where, can you explain the last part again? What is it doing for you?
Yeah, so for example, we have a component here that is in a different file, and I'm calling it. If I was in IntelliJ, I will just press the command and I will just click.
And it would go to that?
And it go straight into that. But in Visual Code, what I will do, I will just search for this file. Of course, the file is fast to go, but again, the command click or, a bit of more, how it's the name, more clever JavaScript.
Yeah, there's a couple ways you can do, if I hear you right, a couple ways you can navigate around in VS Code. You can hit Command P and then type the file name that you want to go to. That's one way. It does pattern matching. You can also do a find definition or go to definition, where you're looking at a component and you can hit the Command key and then click. It'll go right to the definition of that component. Is that what you're looking for? Something similar? Great, perfect. So if you're in there and you're looking at it, and I'm not in Angular here, hold on, let me open up a components. So here's a heroes component. I'm looking at a service here. If I hover over it and then I click on it, it goes right to that particular one there. You can also come back to it and you can right click and do peek. So if I peek, that's what this does. Check this out. It'll show me the code in the other file without leaving the file that you're in. And then you can either double click in here to go there if you want, or you can get back out. There's a couple of ways you can do it. Cool. Unless there's any other questions?
I don't think we do, so thank you very much, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty.